He walked into the restaurant like any other guest, quiet, polite, unnoticed. But within minutes, every eye in the room was on him, not because of who he was, but because of what they thought he wasn't, a black man in a sea of privilege, treated like an intruder in a place he helped build. The whispers started first, then the laughter, then the humiliation. What no one knew was that the man they were mocking wasn't there to eat at their table. He owned it. But before the truth came out, the world would watch him be stripped of his dignity, one cruel assumption at a time. He thought it was just dinner. It became a test of everything he stood for. What happens when power wears the face no one expects? If he had known how quickly one reservation could turn into a public reckoning, he might have walked away, but it was already too late. For Marcus Washington, Friday nights were usually quiet, a routine dinner, a few notes scribbled in his leather portfolio, and a silent toast to another week of progress. He was a man who preferred staying unseen, no entourage, no flash, no noise. Decades of building his empire had taught him that real power didn't need to announce itself. That evening, Chicago's skyline glowed against the glass of his car as he arrived at Meridian, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. He had been here before many times, but never as the owner. 3 weeks earlier, he'd acquired the entire chain through his company, MW Hospitality Group. Tonight was supposed to be quiet, private, just a man celebrating his latest victory at the table he'd personally reserved. Inside, the air hummed with laughter, clinking glasses and the low buzz of money. Waiters floated between tables like shadows, serving those who never had to wait. Marcus moved through the crowd unnoticed, dressed simply like any other diner. No designer suit, no bodyguards, just confidence wrapped in calm. He didn't see the couple yet. Didn't hear the laughter that would soon echo across the marble floors. For now, he was just a man looking forward to dinner, a dinner that would reveal far more about the world around him than any business deal ever could. He thought this night would be a quiet celebration of success. Instead, it would become a public lesson in perception, privilege, and the cost of prejudice. But before the night was over, every person in that room would learn who he really was, and what happens when quiet power refuses to stay silent. Marcus handed his keys to the valet and stepped into the low amber light of Meridian's foyer. The scent of truffle butter and aged wine filled the air, but beneath it pulsed something colder, attention. It started subtle, like static in the air. The hostess glanced at him, then past him, expecting someone else. When she realized he was alone, her smile tightened. "Good evening," she said, voice polite but practiced. Her eyes flicked from his sweater to his worn jeans, then to the black reservation folder in his hand. "Do you have a reservation?" Marcus nodded, offering the printed confirmation. "Table 7, 9 p.m. She hesitated for a heartbeat too long before taking it. "One moment, sir." She turned, whispering to another host, who whispered to the third. Marcus watched their small circle of uncertainty form, felt the room's warmth evaporate. Then, from across the dining room, laughter, sharp, performative, cutting through the background jazz. A man and woman, dressed in designer perfection, lounged across the VIP booth he'd reserved. The man raised his glass of mock toast toward Marcus, the woman filming on her phone, eyes glinting with cruelty. "Someone thought this table was available," the hostess murmured, avoiding his gaze. Marcus felt a shift in the room, curiosity rippling outward as guests turned to watch. Every camera lens seemed to tilt toward him, capturing not the billionaire owner, but the black man being quietly dismissed. He approached the booth, calm but firm, asking for his reserved table. The couple's smirks widened. They called him confused, suggested he'd wandered into the wrong section. Their words weren't loud, but they didn't need to be. The humiliation was amplified by silence, the kind of silence that fills spaces where prejudice feels safe. The manager appeared next, his voice smooth as glass, apologizing for the mix-up, while defending the couple's right to stay. Marcus showed the time-stamped confirmation again. It didn't matter. The couple stayed seated, the crowd stayed watching, and the staff stayed complicit. A camera light flashed, Jessica's phone live-streaming their cruelty to thousands. "Some people don't understand their place," someone at a nearby table whispered, loud enough for Marcus to hear. The sting wasn't in the words, but in how normal they sounded, how easily strangers decided who did or didn't belong. He felt anger press against his ribs, but kept his composure. He'd learned long ago that rage was a luxury denied to men who looked like him. He checked his watch, 8:52 p.m., 3 minutes past his reservation time. The manager used that delay as justification. "Our policy releases tables after 3 minutes," he said smoothly, as if quoting scripture. The crowd approved with nods and murmurs. The couple smirked deeper into their champagne. And then came the accusation, casual, poisonous. "You sure he's supposed to be here?" The man asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. A ripple of laughter followed, polite and poisonous. A security guard appeared, tall, broad, expressionless. "Sir, we need you to step aside." Marcus's pulse slowed. Years of corporate warfare had taught him when to speak and when to let silence do the work. Trespassing. The manager whispered to the guard. The word burned like a brand. Trespassing. In a restaurant he had bought. Cameras recorded. Phones rose higher. The woman at the booth tilted her phone toward him, narrating their version of the truth. "This guy's trying to steal our table." The crowd laughed again. Marcus felt it all. The cold judgment, the false smiles, the centuries-old way of assumptions pressing against his chest. He wasn't angry yet, just tired. Tired of earning rooms that still didn't see him as worthy to stand in them. The guard stepped closer. The woman zoomed in. The world closed around him. Then Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out his leather portfolio, the same one he carried at every acquisition, every boardroom, every deal. The crowd fell quiet, thinking it a last, desperate protest. They didn't know what was inside, or how the next few moments would turn the entire room upside down. He thought the worst humiliation had already happened, but what came next would silence an entire city. The restaurant froze as Marcus unlatched his leather portfolio and unfolded the documents inside. No raised voice, no anger, just calm precision that cut sharper than any confrontation. The security guards paused mid-step, uncertainty flickering across their faces. Marcus placed the papers gently on a nearby table, the soft slap of paper against marble echoing through the silence. The manager reached for them, eyes narrowing, ready to dismiss whatever proof this man thought he had. But as he scanned the embossed letterhead, the color drained from his face. M.W. Hospitality Group. Acquisition papers. Purchase amount, $47 million. Date, 3 weeks ago. The room inhaled as one. Phones trembled in hands. The live stream that had mocked Marcus now zoomed in on the very words that proved he owned everything around them. "Read aloud," Marcus said quietly. The guard hesitated, then obeyed, voice cracking as he read each line. His name, his company, his ownership. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The couple at the booth stiffened, their laughter dying on their lips. The manager's polished confidence collapsed into disbelief. "Mr. Washington," he stammered, but Marcus wasn't listening anymore. His gaze swept the room. The diners who had filmed his humiliation, the staff who'd turned their backs, the couple who'd built their arrogance on his silence. "You thought I didn't belong here," his voice steady, almost gentle. "But this place, this table, this building belongs to me." The words hit harder than any shout. Silence filled the space where mockery had been. Jessica's live stream viewer count skyrocketed, the comments flipping in real time from ridicule to shock. "Wait, he's the owner. We just watched discrimination happen live." The weight of it all settled like a storm cloud over the chandeliers. The manager tried to speak again, an apology already forming, but Marcus raised a hand. "Don't." His calm was heavier than rage, his control unnerving. Every camera caught the quiet power in his eyes, the pain of a man who'd been invisible in a room he built, and the strength of one who no longer would be. Brad shifted in the booth, eyes darting, searching for an exit that didn't exist. Jessica's phone trembled as she tried to keep recording, but the world had already seen enough. Every witness in that room felt it. The sudden collapse of their assumptions, the sharp mirror of their own prejudice staring back at them. Marcus didn't gloat. He didn't need to. He simply stood there, owning the truth that had been his all along. For a long, breathless moment, nobody moved. The humiliation that was meant for him now belonged to everyone else. The couple's arrogance, the manager's bias, the diner's silence. It all played back in their minds, every smirk, every word, every judgment. The live stream continued without commentary, capturing the exact second power shifted hands. Marcus picked up his black Amex card, placed it on the table beside the documents, and looked directly into the camera lens of Jessica's phone. "This," he said quietly, "is what ownership looks like." His voice wasn't a statement. It was a reckoning. But what he did next wouldn't just reclaim his dignity. It would expose every hidden truth beneath their polished smiles. The silence that followed was heavier than any apology. Marcus stood still as the reality of the moment rippled outward. The same people who had laughed now stared at their plates, unable to meet his eyes. The manager's voice faltered as he tried to explain, but there was nothing left to say. The couple who had stolen his table were no longer streaming. Their camera hung forgotten, the live feed ending mid-breath. Across social media, the clip spread like wildfire. Millions watching as a black man, quietly humiliated in public, revealed he was the owner of the very place that had rejected him. Some viewers cheered his composure. Others saw in his restraint the deeper wound of generations who had learned to swallow their anger just to survive. Marcus didn't raise his voice, didn't demand respect. He simply reclaimed it. He fired no one on impulse, made no scene. Instead, he instructed his team to implement new policies, mandatory bias training, equal treatment enforcement, and zero tolerance for discrimination across all MW hospitality locations. The same restaurant that once turned him away would now become a symbol of accountability. But as the cameras faded and the crowd dispersed, Marcus knew this moment wasn't victory. It was exposure. He had wealth, power, and proof, yet still, prejudice had met him at the door. If a billionaire could be treated as less than human for the color of his skin, what chance did those without power have? That thought stayed with him long after the lights dimmed. He sat alone at his reclaimed table, the city shimmering through the glass, and realized the fight wasn't about a reservation. It was about recognition. Every headline that followed called it a powerful twist, a viral redemption, but Marcus knew better. This wasn't a twist. It was a mirror, one reflecting how quickly society still measures worth by appearance instead of humanity. His story wasn't unique. It was simply recorded. For every Marcus who can reveal his ownership papers, there are countless others who walk away silent, unseen, unprotected. That night, as he left the restaurant, he didn't feel vindicated. He felt reminded that racism doesn't vanish with success. It just learns to hide behind smiles, policies, and polite tones. The next morning, the video hit every major outlet. It sparked debates, apologies, outrage, and reflection. But Marcus didn't watch the coverage. He was already moving forward, determined to turn humiliation into change. Because sometimes the most powerful statement isn't anger, it's dignity. And sometimes the loudest revolution is simply refusing to disappear. So the next time someone is judged before they're known, before they're seen, before they're heard, maybe they'll remember this story. Maybe they'll hesitate before assuming who belongs and who doesn't. Because the truth is simple and it demands an answer. How many more people have to prove their worth before we finally see their humanity?